I never expected to discover just how calculated betrayal could be, or that I'd find the strength to refuse being someone's backup plan. My name is Jason Miller, and I'm 31 years old. I work remotely as a logistics specialist living in a one-bedroom apartment that finally feels like mine after everything that happened. Emily Carter, my former fiancée, looked me in the eyes across our kitchen table and asked for a break to explore things with Kyle Henderson, her coworker, while keeping our engagement on hold. Beth, my protective younger sister, had warned me about Emily's controlling tendencies for years. Marco, my closest friend, offered his couch in San Diego when I needed to escape Portland and start over. The betrayal wasn't just in Emily's words. It was in the meticulous planning behind them. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I'll never forget that kitchen table, the polished oak we'd chosen together when we moved in, thinking we'd spend years around it, raising kids, celebrating holidays. That morning, the surface between us might as well have been a mile wide. Emily sat with her hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had stopped steaming 10 minutes earlier. I hadn't touched mine. The silence had stretched thin between us since she dropped her little bombshell about needing a break. My throat felt tight, but I forced the words out anyway. "Because of Kyle," I said, flatly. "Say his name so we both stop pretending." Her eyes widened slightly. She'd expected me to dance around it, I realized, to avoid the obvious so she could keep the conversation vague. "It's not like that," she whispered, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I once found endearing. I want to be honest with you while I explore." "You want me to hold your seat while you date him?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out the small velvet box that had lived there for the past year, and slid it across the table. "We're done." Her mouth twisted into a shape I'd never seen before, something between shock and outrage. "No, you're—" She struggled to find the right words, her composure cracking. "That's not what I'm asking for." "You're asking for a trial separation to audition a new lead," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I'm canceling the show." Emily leaned forward, her voice sharpening as she reached for my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me. "Please, I just need to figure this out. Don't be scared." That did it. That patronizing tone, like I was a child afraid of the dark, rather than a man facing betrayal. "I'm not afraid," I said, standing up from my chair. "I'm awake." The legs scraped against the hardwood floor, a sound that seemed to punctuate my statement. I looked down at her, really seeing her for perhaps the first time. How had I missed this version of Emily that had been there all along? "You can't just walk away from 3 years together," she said, voice rising. "You're being rash. You're not thinking clearly." "I've never been clearer," I replied. "You don't get to explore Kyle while I wait in the wings. That's not how this works." Her tears started then, right on cue. I'd seen them before when we argued, usually followed by me apologizing even when I was wrong. Not this time. "Jason, please," she sobbed. "I love you. I just need some time to be sure." "You don't need time," I said quietly. "You need permission to cheat without consequences, and I won't give it to you." The argument stretched for another hour. Her assurances that Kyle might be nothing, my steady refusal to be an option, her accusations that I was throwing everything away, my insistence that she had already done the throwing. When I finally walked away from that table, I felt hollow, but strangely calm. I spent the night methodically dismantling our shared life, boxing photos, emailing the venue to cancel, sending a quick message to my boss about initiating a transfer. One of the benefits of working remotely in logistics, I could relocate without losing my job. Emily alternated between tearful pleas and cold silence, watching me pack from the doorway of our bedroom. By morning, I'd loaded everything I needed into my car. "You'll regret this," she said as I placed the last box in my trunk. "When you calm down, you'll see you're overreacting." I looked at her, standing on our, now her, porch, the woman I'd planned to marry. Goodbye. The drive south felt like crossing a border into a different life. I stopped only for gas and coffee, watching the miles tick by on the interstate. With each state line, the tightness in my chest loosened a fraction. Night had fallen by the time I pulled into San Diego. The coastal air hit differently than Portland's, warmer, saltier. I parked outside Marco's apartment complex and shut off the engine, sitting in the sudden silence. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Emily. I powered it off completely. Exhaustion washed over me as I leaned back in the driver's seat. I'd done it, cut the cord, walked away instead of staying to be her safety net while she tested the waters with Kyle. As I gathered the energy to grab my overnight bag and knock on Marco's door, the question settled into the back of my mind. Would Emily truly accept my silence, or was this only the beginning? I woke to the smell of coffee and Marco's off-key humming. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then it all rushed back. Emily, the drive, the escape. "Morning, sunshine." Marco appeared above me holding a steaming mug. "You look like hell warmed over." I sat up on his lumpy couch, my back protesting after the long drive and uncomfortable sleep. "Thanks for the compliment. And the couch. Hey, misa casa and all that." He handed me the coffee. "So, you going to tell me what happened, or do I have to guess?" I took a long sip before answering. Emily wanted a break to date her coworker. I broke up with her instead. Marco let out a low whistle. "Damn, just like that?" "Just like that." I ran a hand through my hair. "I need to find a place. Can't crash here forever." "No rush, man." Marco sat across from me. "But I know a few neighborhoods worth checking out. Balboa Park area is nice. Good running trails. You still run, right?" I nodded. Running had been my therapy before Emily. Before everything. "Perfect. Shower up, we'll grab breakfast, and I'll show you around." The day passed in a blur of apartment viewings. Most were too expensive, or too dark, or too, wrong. But the 5th place, a 1-bedroom near Balboa Park, had windows that caught the afternoon light just right. The landlady, Mrs. Alvarez, was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who asked straightforward questions and seemed satisfied with my equally straightforward answers. "First and last month's rent," she said, handing me the application. "No pets, no smoking, no drama." "No drama sounds perfect," I said, and meant it. By sunset, I had a signed lease and a set of keys. Marco helped me carry the few boxes from my car up to the 2nd-floor unit. "Not bad for day 1, he said, looking around the empty space. "Needs furniture, though." "I'll handle it," I replied, one step at a time. After Marco left, I sat on the floor of my new living room, phone in hand. I needed to call Beth. She'd worry if she didn't hear from me. "Jason?" Her voice sounded anxious when she picked up. "Where are you? Emily called Mom looking for you." "San Diego," I said. "I'm fine. I found an apartment today." "San Diego? What happened?" I explained as simply as I could. Emily's request, Kyle, my decision to leave. "Oh, Jason." Beth's voice softened. "I'm so sorry." "I'm okay," I said, but my voice cracked on the last word, betraying me. "No, you're not. But you will be," she said firmly. "And you did the right thing. I'm proud of you." After we hung up, I sat in the empty apartment, watching shadows stretch across the bare walls. Tomorrow, I'd buy a bed, maybe a table, start putting together the pieces of a new life. The next week passed in a measured rhythm. I found the discount furniture store and bought the essentials: a bed, a desk for work, a small kitchen table. I started running again, exploring the trails through Balboa Park in the early mornings before the heat set in. My laptop connected me to my job, and I was grateful for the distraction of logistics problems that had nothing to do with my personal life. I blocked Emily's number, then her email. I deleted our shared photo albums and untagged myself from pictures on social media. Each action felt like sealing another crack, making sure no light could get through from the past to the present. I was careful, or thought I was. What I overlooked was the shared online bill pay account we'd set up for utilities. I'd updated my address there, not thinking about how Emily still had the login information. A small oversight with consequences I wouldn't understand until later. Days flowed into each other. I worked, I ran, I ate takeout on my new couch. Sometimes Marco and his wife invited me over for dinner. The routine was simple, but it was mine. and with each passing day without contact from Emily, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had accepted the break. Then came the 12th day. I returned from my morning run, sweat cooling on my skin in the hallway's air conditioning, to find a bouquet sitting at my apartment door. Fresh flowers, lilies and roses, wrapped in green paper. No card was attached. I picked up the bouquet carefully, like it might bite. The flowers were fresh, probably delivered that morning. My heart pounded as I unlocked my door and carried them inside. That's when I saw it. An envelope tucked among the stems with my name scratched across it in handwriting I recognized immediately. I pulled out the note, unfolding it with fingers that suddenly felt clumsy. I hate how you left. We need to talk. I'm flying down. E. I stood frozen in the quiet of my apartment, the note trembling slightly in my hand. The distance I'd put between us, both physical and emotional, suddenly seemed paper thin. How had she found my address so quickly? And what did she mean, flying down? Was she already here, in San Diego? The bouquet sat on my counter, its sweet scent turning cloying in the still air. I set the bouquet on my kitchen counter and stared at it for a long moment. Then training kicked in. Years of documenting shipping discrepancies and inventory issues made me methodical, even when my heart was racing. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. The bouquet from multiple angles, the envelope with my name, the note itself, making sure the handwriting was clear, date and timestamp visible on my phone screen. Then I called Marco. "Hey, you busy?" I tried to keep my voice even. "Just fixing
A carburetor? What's up?" The sound of tools clanking filled the background. Emily found my address. She sent flowers with a note saying she's coming here. The clanking stopped. "I'll be there in 15. While waiting, I searched my apartment, checking windows, door locks, scanning the parking lot from my balcony. Nothing seemed out of place, but knowing Emily had found me made the space feel compromised. Marco arrived with grease still on his hands, wiping them on a shop rag. He whistled low when he saw the bouquet. "That's not good." He picked up the note, reading it with a frown. "How'd she find you?" "I think I left our joint bill pay account active. My new address would be visible there." I rubbed my temples. Stupid mistake. "Hey, you were leaving a relationship, not entering witness protection." Marco squeezed my shoulder. "But we should take this seriously." That afternoon, I bought a small black notebook at the pharmacy downstairs. On the first page, I wrote the date, time, and detailed description of the bouquet delivery. I needed records, clear chronological evidence of everything that happened. The next morning, Marco showed up with a small motion-activated camera. "My buddy uses these for his contracting business," he explained, mounting it discreetly above my door. "It'll catch anyone who approaches. The footage uploads to your phone automatically." "Thanks." I watched him adjust the angle. "I feel like I'm overreacting." "Better safe than sorry. If she flew down here after you specifically told her it was over," Marco shook his head. "That's not normal, man." I introduced myself to my landlord that afternoon, a practical woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on her nose. "Mrs. Alvarez, I'm Jason Miller in 2B. "Yes, of course," she smiled, looking up from her desk. "How are you settling in?" I explained the situation as briefly as possible. Her expression grew serious as I showed her Emily's note. "I understand," she said firmly. "I'll call you immediately if anyone asks about your apartment, and I'll alert the front desk staff too." By the end of the week, I'd consulted with an attorney named Laia Torres, whose office was a 20-minute drive away. She was direct, practical, with a no-nonsense attitude that made me feel steadier. "Document everything," she told me, reviewing the photos I'd taken. "Times, dates, any contact attempts. If she shows up, don't engage. Call the police immediately. We need a paper trail if we're going to pursue a restraining order." "Is it enough?" I asked. "All I have is flowers and a note." "Not yet," Laia said bluntly. "But people like this rarely stop at one attempt. Keep collecting evidence. I'll be ready when you need me." I threw myself into routine. Early morning runs through Balboa Park, remote work from my desk by the window, phone calls with Beth, and Friday dinners at Marco's place with his wife. The rhythm helped keep the anxiety at bay. On Tuesday evening, a knock at my door startled me. I checked the peephole cautiously, half expecting to see Emily. Instead, it was a woman in scrubs. My upstairs neighbor, I realized. "Hi," she said when I opened the door. I'm Nora from 3B. I brought cookies as a peace offering. Peace offering? I asked, confused. She smiled, a little embarrassed. I heard you practicing guitar earlier. You're getting better. I laughed despite myself. That bad, huh? Let's just say I've heard worse in hospital waiting rooms. She handed me the plate. Chocolate chip. Stress baking is my therapy after 12-hour shifts. We talked on the landing for a few minutes. Easy conversation about the building, her nursing job, my recent move. There was something restful about her presence. No expectations or history between us. After she left, I felt a glimpse of what normal could be like again. Simple exchanges, new connections that were shadowed by the past. The feeling lasted until my phone buzzed that evening with a new email notification. The address wasn't one I'd recognized, but the message made my stomach drop. Jason, you're being childish. We were supposed to be forever. Call me back. No signature, but it didn't need one. I stared at the screen, dread settling in my chest like a stone. The black notebook was on my desk, and I logged the email time and exact wording, then took a screenshot. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I knew engaging was risky, but I needed to establish a clear boundary. One time, one message, making my position unmistakable. I typed a single line. Do not contact me again. I hit send, then immediately blocked the email address, knowing in my gut this would not be the end. 3 days later, I met with Laya again, this time with a manila folder containing all my evidence. I slid the photos of the bouquet across her desk, along with printouts of the email and clear images of the envelope with my scratched name. Good, she said, examining each item methodically. You're documenting everything correctly. Is it enough? I asked, leaning forward in my chair. Laya tapped her pen against the desk. It's enough to file for a temporary restraining order. That will give us protection until we can get a full hearing scheduled. And how long will that take? A few weeks. The temporary order is valid immediately once granted, but will need to appear before a judge for the permanent one. She looked me directly in the eyes. There been any further contact since the email? I shook my head. No, but I don't think she's done. Probably not, Laya agreed. Most stalking cases follow a pattern of escalation. The temporary order will be our first line of defense. She explained the process, filing the paperwork, what the order would prohibit, how to report violations. I listened carefully, taking notes in my black notebook. For the first time since finding the bouquet, I felt like I had a plan. I'll file this today, Laya said, gathering the documents. Keep your phone on. I'll call as soon as I hear anything. Thank you, I said, standing to leave, for taking this seriously. That's my job, she smiled briefly, but you're doing yours too. Collecting evidence, staying calm. Most clients in your position are too emotional to think clearly. I walked out of her office feeling steadier than I had in weeks. Life outside the legal proceedings was actually improving. My supervisor approved a raise during our quarterly review, impressed with how I'd maintained productivity through the move. I found a decent couch at a secondhand store and a dining table that didn't wobble. My apartment was starting to feel like mine. Marco and his wife invited me over for dinner twice that week. You can't live on takeout forever, he insisted, though I suspected it was more about keeping an eye on me. Nora, from upstairs, became a more frequent visitor, sometimes stopping by after her hospital shifts with stories about bizarre emergency room encounters. Her laugh was tired but genuine, and her company asked nothing of me. No explanations, no carefully edited histories. How do you handle it? I asked her one evening as we sat on my small balcony, seeing people at their worst moments every day. You compartmentalize, she said, sipping her tea. You learn to be present without absorbing everything, otherwise you drown. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. 10 days after filing the paperwork, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize but immediately knew. Patricia and Gerald Carter, Emily's parents. Jason, we're so sorry about Emily's behavior. We've spoken with her and want to smooth things over. Could we talk? We only want what's best for everyone. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy for them, caught between their daughter's actions and the consequences. But engaging would only open a door I needed to keep firmly closed. I typed a single line.
I wish you well, but this is finished. Then I blocked their number too. That evening, Laya called with news. The temporary restraining order has been granted. I'll email you the documentation. Emily cannot contact you. Come within 100 yards of you, your home, or your workplace. Thank you, I said, feeling the tension in my shoulders release. What happens if she violates it? Call the police immediately. Document the violation. It strengthens our case for the permanent order. That night, I slept deeply for the first time since leaving Portland. The restraining order felt like a shield, legal proof that my boundaries were valid and protected. The next morning, I laced up my running shoes at dawn, feeling almost normal. The morning air was cool as I jogged through the neighborhood, planning my workday in my head. An hour later, I returned to my building, sweaty and clear-headed. I climbed the stairs to my floor, then stopped abruptly. My doormat was shredded, fibers pulled apart and scattered. Around the lock, fresh scratches marred the metal plate. The motion camera's indicator light blinked steadily, signaling that it had captured footage. I stared at my door, a cold weight settling in my stomach. The restraining order had already been violated. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called Marco. "She was here," I said when he answered. "My door, there's damage." "I'm coming up," I heard rustling on his end. "Don't touch anything." Marco appeared minutes later, still in his work clothes, toolbox in hand. He whistled low when he saw the door. "Let's check the camera first," he said. We connected his laptop to the camera and downloaded the footage. Frame by frame, we watched as a hooded figure entered the building, tailgating behind Mrs. Alvarez. The timestamp showed 2:13 a.m. "That's definitely Emily," I said, recognizing her walk, the way she tilted her head slightly to the right. She waited until the middle of the night. The figure moved into the stairwell, then up to my floor. For nearly 20 minutes, she stood outside my door, occasionally touching the handle before pulling something from her pocket. A key? A tool? The angle was hard to tell. Then she knelt, working at the doormat with what looked like a small knife. "Wait," Marco said, pausing the video. "Look at that timestamp jump." The video skipped ahead about 10 minutes. "Motion sensor," he explained. "It only records when there's movement." When the recording resumed, Emily was standing again, now at the lock. Then suddenly she froze, head turning sharply toward the elevator. Mrs. Alvarez stepped into frame, stopping when she saw the hooded figure. Emily bolted toward the stairs. "Mrs. Alvarez didn't tell me," I said. "Probably didn't realize who it was," Marco replied. "She just saw someone sketchy and scared them off."
Backed up the footage, enhanced several frames showing Emily's face partially visible beneath the hood. "This is clear enough," he said, saving the screenshots, "but let's check your car too." If she was here? We headed down to the garage. Marco circled my car, dropping to his knees to check underneath. "Shit," he muttered, reaching beneath the rear wheel well. "Found something?" He pulled out a small black device about the size of a matchbox with a strong magnet attached. "It's a tracker," he said, holding it up. "GPS, she's been following your movements." My chest tightened. The air suddenly felt thin, insufficient. I took the tracker from Marco's hand, its weight sickening. "Take pictures," Marco said. "Document everything. Time, date, where we found it." I mechanically followed his instructions, adding the new evidence to my black notebook. The tight feeling in my chest wouldn't go away. "She was watching me," I said quietly. "Probably knew when I was running, when I was home." Marco placed a hand on my shoulder. "Call your lawyer, now." 2 hours later, I sat in Yala's office laying out the evidence, the photos, the tracker, and the video footage saved to a flash drive. "This strengthens our case considerably," Laya said, examining everything. "Clear violations of the temporary order." "Will they arrest her?" I asked. Laya's expression tightened. "That depends on the responding officers, but this is definitely enough for charges. The tracker especially. That's stalking, pure and simple." She made copies of everything, then leaned forward, her expression grave. "Jason, I need to be honest with you. This is good for our case, but it's also concerning. Escalation like this, from flowers to property damage to tracking devices, shows she's getting more desperate." "What does that mean?" "It means be careful, change your routines, vary your schedule. Don't be predictable." I nodded, feeling that tightness in my chest again.
Over the next few days, I became hypervigilant. I jogged at different times, took varying routes to work, checked my locks twice before bed. I asked Marco to sweep my car for more trackers every other day. Despite everything, I accepted when Nora invited me for a Saturday picnic at Balboa Park. Maybe it was foolish, but I needed something normal. The afternoon was unexpectedly perfect. We spread a blanket under a sprawling oak, sharing sandwiches and cold drinks. Nora told me about her worst patients and best recoveries. I felt myself laughing genuinely for the first time in weeks. "You have a nice laugh," she said. "You should use it more often." Later, as the sun dipped lower, she rested her head against my shoulder. We sat in comfortable silence, watching families pack up, joggers circling the paths. For those few hours, I almost forgot about Emily, the restraining order, the evidence piling up in my black notebook. The illusion shattered when I returned home and checked my phone. 3 voicemails from unknown numbers. The first, silence, then a click. The second, muffled sounds, someone breathing. The third, Emily's voice, soft but unmistakable. "Kyle was a mistake. Don't shut me out forever." I deleted them all, my hands steady despite the fury simmering inside me. I documented the calls, noting times and what was said. Sitting at my desk, I stared at the black notebook, now filled with dates, times, evidence of Emily's refusal to let go. The temporary order hadn't stopped her. The distance hadn't discouraged her. Every line of communication I closed, she found another to open. I closed the notebook firmly. The next confrontation wouldn't be through notes or calls or trackers hidden on my car. It would be face-to-face in court, where she couldn't run from what she'd done. The text from Patricia came 3 days after the hearing date was set. "Jason, we're in town. Please meet us. Parent to parent. Just coffee." Parent to parent. The words stung more than she could know. Emily and I had talked about kids, names, schools, weekend traditions. Now those phantom children were being used as leverage. I almost declined, but Laya advised meeting them. "Keep it public," she said. "Their testimony could affect the hearing." I chose a diner near my office, bright lighting, waitstaff who knew me, parking lot cameras. I arrived 15 minutes early, taking a booth with clear sightlines to both exits. Patricia and Gerald entered at exactly noon. They looked smaller somehow, gray around the edges. Patricia's carefully styled hair couldn't hide the worry lines. Gerald's shoulders stooped under his tailored jacket. "Jason," Patricia breathed, sliding into the booth. "Thank you for coming." Gerald nodded stiffly, sitting beside his wife. I ordered coffee. They did the same. The waitress filled our mugs and retreated, leaving an uncomfortable silence. "How have you been?" Patricia asked, her voice gentle, practiced. "Fine," I replied. No elaboration. Patricia reached across the table, clasping my hand in both of hers. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. "Jason, we are so sorry. Emily is not herself. She's going through something difficult." I pulled my hand back. "She is exactly herself," I said quietly. "She wanted a break to date Kyle and keep me on standby. Now she wants control back. I'm not a shelf."
"Return to..." Patricia flinched. Gerald cleared his throat. "We understand you're hurt," he said, his businessman's voice taking over. "But this restraining order, it's going to follow her, affect her career. If you drop it, we'll make sure she leaves you alone." I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitter heat steady me. "You don't negotiate with someone who ignored no and a judge's order," I said evenly. "You help her face consequences so she stops hurting people. I'm not dropping anything." Patricia's eyes welled. "She made a mistake with Kyle. He left her and she..." "That's not my business," I cut in. "My business is what happened after I ended things. The tracking device on my car, the violation of the temporary order, the constant messages. That's what we're discussing in court." Gerald leaned forward. "We can compensate you for any inconvenience." I felt heat rise in my neck. "This isn't about money." "Then what do you want?" Patricia asked, desperation edging her voice. "Distance," I said simply. "Complete and permanent distance. And since asking didn't work and a temporary order didn't work, we'll try the full version with real penalties." Patricia dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "You loved her once." "I loved who I thought she was," I corrected. "Someone who respected boundaries, someone who could hear no." Gerald sighed heavily. "You're determined to do this."
I didn't determine anything, I replied. Emily made these choices. I'm just ensuring they have consequences. I placed a $5 bill on the table for my coffee and stood. I wish you both well, I said, but I'm not part of your family's story anymore. Patricia looked stricken. Gerald nodded stiffly, something like resignation crossing his face. I walked out of the diner, sunlight hitting my face. For the first time since the flowers appeared at my door, I felt completely certain. 2 days later, I stood in the courthouse hallway, Laya at my side, reviewing our documentation one last time. The temporary order, the photographs, the black notebook filled with dates and times, the video footage, all ready. Remember, Laya said, let me do the talking. Answer questions directly. Don't engage with her. I nodded, scanning the hallway. That's when I saw her. Emily looked smaller than I remembered, dressed conservatively in a navy blazer and skirt, her eyes locked on mine. She started walking toward us, her face arranged in that soft, pleading expression I once found irresistible. Laya stepped between us. Miss Carter, my client has a temporary order against you. Please maintain your distance. Emily ignored her, trying to make eye contact with me around Laya's shoulder. Jason, please, 2 minutes. I felt something hard crystallize in my chest. I raised my voice just enough to carry clearly. You will not fix this with tears, I said. You made a choice when you said break and then followed me. My answer is the same as it was at our table. No, I don't want updates. I don't want apologies. I want distance you can measure. Emily's face hardened, the plea disappearing like a mask dropped. Kyle was a mistake, she whispered. Not my business, I replied coldly. My business is never hearing from you again. The bailiff appeared at the courtroom door. Carter versus Miller, he called. Laya gathered our files. That's us. I turned toward the courtroom, feeling Emily's glare on my back. The weight of it should have bothered me, but instead I felt lighter with each step. Whatever happened inside would determine whether she faced real consequences or whether I'd need to move again, further, harder to find. I walked through the heavy wooden doors, Laya beside me, feeling the moments stretch between past and future. Inside the courtroom, I sat rigid beside Laya as the bailiff called our case. The room was smaller than I'd expected, more functional than dramatic. Just worn wooden benches, fluorescent lighting, and a judge's bench that looked like it had weathered decades of human conflict. The judge, a woman with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses perched on her nose, reviewed our paperwork before looking up. We're here for a permanent restraining order. Ms. Torres, please present your evidence. Laya stood, poised and methodical. Your Honor, we have documented multiple violations of the temporary order already in place. She approached the bench with our black folder of evidence. One by one, she presented the photographs of the bouquet, the scratched envelope, printouts of emails from new addresses, and the voicemail transcripts. Each item felt like a brick being laid between Emily and me, a wall of evidence she couldn't talk her way around. Most concerning, Laya continued, is this. She played the motion camera footage on her tablet, the hooded figure, unmistakably Emily, slipping into my building, lingering in the stairwell, then fleeing when spotted. And this tracking device was found magnetically attached to the underside of my client's vehicle. Laya placed the small black tracker in an evidence bag on the judge's desk. The judge frowned, examining it. Miss Carter, did you place this on Mr. Miller's car? Emily sat across the aisle, hands folded in her lap. When she spoke, her voice was soft, practiced, the same gentle tone she'd used when asking for a break months ago. Your Honor, I just wanted closure. Jason left so suddenly.
Wouldn't answer calls. I made a mistake. She dabbed at her eyes. I just needed to talk. By tracking his vehicle. The judge's tone was flat. I was desperate. Kyle had left, and I realized what I'd thrown away. I felt my jaw tighten. Even now, she was making it about her pain, her needs. The judge consulted the timeline Latoya had prepared. You sent flowers on March 12th, correct? I don't remember the exact date, Emily said, blinking. And you entered Mr. Miller's building on March 17th. I just wanted to talk to him face to face. After the temporary restraining order was served on March 15th, Emily hesitated. I didn't think it was fair. We were engaged for 2 years. The judge looked at her over her reading glasses. Miss Carter, court orders aren't subject to your opinion of fairness. Emily's voice cracked. He's punishing me for a moment of confusion. I made one mistake." "3 violations of a court order aren't mistakes," the judge interrupted. "They're choices." I watched Emily's carefully constructed facade begin to crumble. The woman who thought tears could erase boundaries was realizing they didn't work on everyone. The judge reviewed our paperwork once more, then set it aside. "Based on the evidence presented, this court grants a 5-year protective order. Miss Carter, you are to maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from Mr. Miller, his residence, and his workplace. No contact through any medium, digital, physical, or through third parties. You will surrender any firearms within 24 hours and enroll in a court-approved stalking intervention program." The gavel struck with a sharp crack. "Additionally, the court grants the small claims judgment for damages to Mr. Miller's property in the amount of $780 for lock replacement, door frame repair, and vehicle inspection." Emily's face collapsed into silent shock. Her attorney whispered something, but she just stared ahead as if she couldn't process that her actions had consequences. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Not joy, not triumph, just relief. The system had worked. My boundaries had been validated. As we gathered our papers, the judge looked directly at Emily. "Ms. Carter, violation of this order carries criminal penalties, including potential jail time. I strongly suggest you comply." Outside in the hallway, LaToya handed me copies of the order. "We got everything we asked for. Keep a copy with you at all times." "Thank you," I said, the words feeling inadequate for the armor she'd helped me build. By the elevators, Patricia and Gerald waited, looking gray and diminished. Patricia stepped forward as I approached. "Jason," she began, voice trembling, "we are so sorry. Please understand. Emily is struggling." Gerald cleared his throat. "We'll make sure she follows the order, and we'll handle the payments for the damages." I looked at them, these people who had almost been my family, and felt nothing but tired finality. "The best thing I can do for all of us," I said flatly, "is refuse to participate. I wish you well, but this needs to be the end." Patricia reached out, then let her hand fall. Gerald nodded stiffly, understanding in his eyes. LaToya and I took the next elevator down. We walked through the courthouse lobby in silence, the paperwork solid in my hands. Outside, the sun hit my face, warm and indifferent to the human drama that had just concluded. For the first time in months, I took a deep breath that didn't catch in my chest. I had reclaimed peace, not through shouting or revenge, but through calm insistence on consequences. As we reached the parking lot, I wondered if Emily would truly obey the order or test its limits once more. Life settled into a new rhythm after the court hearing. I didn't celebrate the restraining order. You don't celebrate putting locks on doors that should never have been forced. But I did sleep better knowing it existed. I changed my routines again, taking different routes to the coffee shop, varying my running path each morning. Marco helped me install new deadbolts in a chain lock that made a satisfying click when engaged. I double-checked windows before bed, a habit that felt less like paranoia and more like practical self-care. "You don't have to look over your shoulder forever," Nora told me one evening as we sat on my small balcony. She'd brought takeout and didn't comment when I checked the parking lot twice before settling in. "I know," I said, "but I'll sleep better knowing I've done everything right." Nora understood boundaries. She never pushed for details about Emily, never tried to psychoanalyze what had happened. Instead, she brought stories from her hospital shifts, laughter about difficult patients, and a calm presence that made my apartment feel like a home again. We took long walks around Balloa Park on weekends, discussing everything except my past. There was something healing about walking next to someone who didn't need you to explain your scars. "My sister wants to meet you," I told her one Sunday as we watched a street performer juggle flaming batons. "The famous Beth?" Nora smiled. "The one who sends you terrible memes at 3 a.m.? That's the one." I remembered how Beth had stood firm when I told her about leaving Portland. No questions, just support. She's flying down next month. 3 weeks after the court hearing,
I drove to the jewelry store where I'd purchased Emily's ring. The same salesman who'd helped me select it now processed the return with professional discretion. "We can offer 60% of the original value," he explained, sliding paperwork across the counter. I signed without hesitation. It wasn't about the money. It was about removing another anchor to the past. That evening, I transferred the refund to my savings account, earmarking it toward a down payment. I'd been browsing listings for small condos near the park. places with secure entries and neighbors who didn't mind guitar practice. I found one the following week, a one-bedroom with morning light and a door that closed with a soft pneumatic whisk instead of a slam. The sound reminded me of hospital doors designed not to startle. I made an offer the same day. For the first time since leaving Portland, I slept through entire nights. No checking my phone at 3 a.m., no startling at distant car doors, just darkness, then dawn. Beth called on a Tuesday morning as I was setting up my work laptop. "So I heard something," she began, her voice carefully neutral. "Through Casey's boyfriend who works in Kyle's building." My stomach tightened. "I don't need to hear about Emily." "I know, but I think you should know this part. Kyle ended things with her a week after you left town. Apparently it was messy. She showed up at his apartment multiple times." I closed my eyes. That doesn't surprise me. The point is, she was already unraveling before she started tracking you down. This wasn't about winning you back, Jason. It was about not losing control. I absorbed this, feeling nothing but distant confirmation. "Doesn't change anything." "No, it doesn't," Beth agreed. "Just thought you should know your absence broke whatever fantasy she was living in." Life continued. My offer on the condo was accepted. Nora helped me pick out kitchen supplies, laughing at my preference for plain white plates. The first night in my new place, I ordered pizza and sat on the floor with Marco and his wife, celebrating with paper napkins and cold beer. 3 peaceful weeks passed in the new condo. Then, on a Thursday night just after 11, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Unknown number. Against every instinct, I pressed play and put it on speaker. Emily's voice filled the room, trembling and raw. "I can't believe you've done this. You ruined us. I won't stop until you understand." I froze, heart suddenly pounding in my chest. The timestamp showed 11:17 p.m. I checked the wall clock. 11:42. This had just happened. The air in the room seemed to thicken. She'd violated the order again. After the court hearing, after the judge's explicit warning. My hands were steady as I picked up the phone again, scrolling to find Lila's number. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about consequences, about the system working the way it should. I pressed dial as the clock ticked past midnight. Lila answered on the 3rd ring. "Jason, it's midnight. What's wrong?" she called. She called, left a voicemail. My voice was steady, almost mechanical. Clear violation of the order. I heard rustling on the other end, probably Lila sitting up in bed. "Can you forward it to me? And how certain are you it's her?" 100%. It's her voice. Forward it now. We'll file first thing tomorrow." The next morning, I sent the voicemail to the police department as Lila instructed. By afternoon, we had a court date for the following week. This time, the hearing would be about violation of a court order, a criminal matter, not just civil. I felt nothing but resolution as I walked into the same courtroom, nodding to the same bailiff. Emily sat at the defendant's table, shoulders rigid in a navy blazer. Her parents weren't visible. Lila settled beside me, papers arranged with precision. The judge, same as before, looked tired when we were called forward. I testified briefly, confirming the voice on the recording, explaining the timing, then answering questions about any contact I might have initiated. None. When the voicemail played in the quiet courtroom, Emily's voice sounded smaller, more desperate than I remembered. I watched the judge's expression harden. Emily's attorney argued for leniency, first offense against the order, emotional distress, family support. When Emily took the stand, she kept her eyes down, voice breaking as she admitted leaving the message in a moment of weakness. The judge wasn't moved. "Ms. Carter, this court made its orders exceptionally clear. You were explicitly prohibited from any contact whatsoever." She leaned forward. "Actions have consequences. This court sentences you to 6 months of probation and mandatory enrollment in a 16-week counseling program focused on boundaries." The gavel struck. Emily's shoulders collapsed. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just the quiet relief of a system working as intended. In the hallway, Lila squeezed my arm gently. "Good outcome. The probation violation will be serious if she tries again." I nodded. "Thank you."
"This should be the end of it," she said, tucking papers into her briefcase. "Most people don't risk criminal charges twice." I drove home in silence, windows down, letting the air clear my thoughts. When I pulled into my new condo's parking space, I sat.
For a minute, just breathing. It wasn't happiness I felt, more like the absence of weight. Within 2 weeks, I'd fully moved into the condo. Marco helped carry furniture up the stairs, refusing payment except in pizza and beer. Nora appeared with houseplants and a framed print for the living room wall, something abstract with blues and grays that somehow made the space feel complete. "You need something living in here," she said, placing a small succulent on the windowsill. "Besides you, I mean." We developed a rhythm. Coffee on weekends, occasional dinners where I'd cook badly and she'd laugh. Nothing rushed, nothing labeled, just two people enjoying the quiet understanding that comes after separate storms. Beth sent memes almost daily, her way of checking in without asking directly if I was okay. I started sending terrible jokes back, our siblings' shorthand for "I'm fine." Work stabilized. I ran most mornings. I played guitar without wincing at wrong notes. The days stacked up into weeks and the weeks into months until Emily's violation faded from immediate memory into something I only recalled when assigning maintenance checks or updating passwords. 4 months after the second hearing, I was loading groceries into my trunk when I spotted them across the parking lot, Patricia and Gerald with Emily trailing a few steps behind. Emily looked thinner, her posture more contained. They hadn't seen me yet. I closed my trunk quietly, watching as Patricia glanced up and froze. Our eyes met across the rows of cars. She lifted her hand as if to wave, then seemed to think better of it, letting it fall to her side. Gerald noticed me next, giving a stiff, formal nod. I returned the nod, nothing more, nothing less. Acknowledgement without invitation. As I slid into the driver's seat, I saw Emily turn, finally spotting me. Her expression shifted through recognition, then something unreadable. I started the engine and drove away without hurrying, without looking back. At home, Nora was waiting on my couch, medical textbook open on her lap, medical glasses perched on her nose. She looked up and smiled. "Good shopping trip?" "Ran into Emily and her parents at the store," I said, setting bags on the counter. Nora closed her book. "You okay?" I thought about it, unpacking apples and coffee. Yeah, it was strange but distant, like seeing characters from a movie I watched a long time ago. "That's good, right?" I nodded, leaning against the counter. Justice isn't loud. It's distance. It's being able to nod and drive away without feeling anything but calm. Nora's smile softened. That's wisdom talking. Later, after dinner, I closed the front door behind us as we headed out for an evening walk. The pneumatic hinge caught it perfectly, sealing with that soft, certain sound that had become the soundtrack of my higher life. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even